Well. Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of the Big Green Dow Power Plant Podcast. I have an amazing legend, a living legend next to me right now, Mr. Michael, Project Sweetie Pie, and many other things. Welcome, brother. How's it going?
How you doing, sir? Good to see you as always.
Yes, thank you for being with us today. You know, I met you probably at the first annual back in 2022. Catherine has been a significant contributor to this, but I assume that you were a partner in crime in some of that. So let's start from the beginning. Like, how did you get into this work around food systems, around land, environment, community building? You've done a lot. What got you here?
Well, I'm going to start this conversation the way I begin all conversations.
Okay.
North Minneapolis is going green. Give us a call and learn what we mean. Where once lie urban blight, now sits luscious garden sites. Gardens without borders, classrooms without walls, architects of our own destinies, access to food, justice for all. And now, like sweet potato vines, our missions and goals all intertwine. So I'm an activist. I'm an organizer. In the 80s, I was the founder of the Juneteenth celebration in the state of Minnesota. Spent 18 years working on that. So I'm just doing the same thing that I've always done, is really trying to bring about Black liberation. And what is it that we need to do as a collective, not as individuals, not following this American credo, of every man, woman, child for himself, as if it's a foot race. But how can we collectively build the next generation and continue to build and act as who we are? We're all freedom fighters. We are all part of the Underground Railroad, and that railroad is still alive and well. So Project Sweetie Pie, the story of a community that came together, worked together for the common good of the youth and families of its community, for it takes a village to raise a child. We're growing good in the neighborhood. Good food, good schools, good youth and families. Education never tasted so good.
And it does taste good. I can vouch for that, y'all, because I went to Minneapolis and I got to see your work firsthand in person. And so, understanding that y'all give out meals, I don't know if it's weekly or daily or how it works, but when I went, the meals y'all gave out, you got a chef, y'all have done workforce development and training and culinary, you're growing gardens, you're making some amazing change. You're partnering with civic organizations. It's come to fruition. How did it come to fruition?
Well, again, I'm kind of a cheater. Like I said, I've been doing this for 50 years.
50 years.
And so it wasn't food sovereignty, it was community building.
Community building.
And realized at a certain point, like I said, I spent 18 years working on Juneteenth. And I finally came
Y'all beat Texas, man. We just got Juneteenth in San Antonio. I don't know if it's all Texas, like 2020. Because of what happened in Minneapolis.
Right. Well, because of what happened all across this country.
Sure.
That we finally,
but that was a big breaking point.
Right. Finally realizing, and again, it bothered me, that we give 365 days a year to white culture, and they're the beneficiary off of the sweat and intellectual capital that we provide for those systems. Don't we deserve as African Americans to donate to our own communities, to our own people? And so Juneteenth was a passion. And when I finally, again, the story behind Project Sweetie Pie was that I was part of a group called Afro Eco. And I was some of the most amazing activists, artists, college professors, the creme de la creme, if you will, of the Black intelligentsia in Minnesota. And we were all part of this group called Afro Eco.
Afro Eco, it got a nice little ring to it.
Right. Sam Grant, Dr. Rose Brewer, Kali Gradick, the list goes on. And we were commiserating about the killing of North High because they were trying to close the school, predominantly African-American school in North Minneapolis, the Black community. And we knew that the killing of a heart of a community, school is the killing of the heart of any community. So in all good consciousness, we couldn't sit back passively and watch that happen.
Had to do something.
Had to do something, had to fight back, had to push back, had to resist. And so we came together. I had already done some work with North High. In the 90s, I created a thing called the Video Brigade. And it was a training program for TV production. Let's give a shout out to this podcast.
Okay.
Because, and so I had the Video Brigade was TV production, web design, and graphics, spreading the word, creating our own narratives, and bringing our community together through our art and culture. I always say that our intergenerational wealth is our collective history. And it's something that we have really not really weighed and measured in terms of its phenomenal value to who we are as individuals, but more importantly, who we are collectively. And so moving that forward in this effort, I approached the school and said, if I could get youth in North Minneapolis to start growing vegetables, could I utilize the green room that had been fallow for over 20 years?
Like a greenhouse, or what's a green room?
It was a green room.
Okay.
Green room is a smaller greenhouse, small space. But all of that resulted as a policy, right? Policy, ill-founded, what does Al Gore call it, unintended consequences.
Okay.
And so in the 90s, where they intentionally went in and they pulled funding from life skills training like carpentry, urban gardening, culinary arts, home ec, all those things that gave people skills.
Started to go away in the 90s.
Pulled it away in the 90s. What did that mean?
That's why I didn't get it in the 2000s.
Exactly. So they basically pulled the rug out from under those brothers, right? I mean, there were brothers who were maybe dumber than a brick, but who had great gifts with their hands, right? They had skills of mechanics. And those people, what that had done heretofore, that had really been a small business in the making. And when they pulled that funding, at the same time flooded our community with drugs, that was a perfect scenario to create the prison pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
Which was by design.
War on drugs.
Yeah, war on drugs, all by design to really incarcerate people and then make them a fugitive of life forever.
Yeah.
That movie show, What Do You Do When You're Branded and You Know You're a Man? That was a TV show in my youth.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to do something different to really change that paradigm from us being consumers by and large to us being producers.
Producers, you got to have the means of production.
Right. It's pretty farcical to think you can live in a free enterprise system that's based on skills or on products or services and not have something that you have to offer. That always is going to put that
consume. Be reliant.
Exactly. So we, in essence, even though we are positioned as the predator, we are indeed the prey. And so here it is. I felt committed, actually left Juneteenth for many years because I said, what kind of culture will we have if we sit here passively and watch it deteriorate and erode right before our very eyes? And so I woke up one night and made a commitment that I was going to set away all my art and culture stuff, that I had been a cultural warrior for decades, and that I was going to put boots on the ground, that I was going to literally, if nobody else would, I would go out and care for these garden lots. Because I asked myself, if my children cared for their room the same way that our municipality was caring for its city lots, I would send them to bed without supper.
Grounded, huh?
Grounded. And so, but here we were allowing that to exist. So the work of Project Sweetie Pie is really the synthesis of three individuals. One, Will Allen, who is the grand poobah in urban farming, was really...
He's in Milwaukee?
Milwaukee. Growing Power was the name of his organization, which was really the leadership that brought to the Obama admin. People don't know this. Michelle Obama and them got their ideas from Will Allen to do that whole food program at the White House. Will Allen's behind that. He's the force. Secondly, the work of Will Steger. Will Steger, world-renowned explorer, traveler, been to the North Pole, been to the South Pole, and he started witnessing firsthand, what the effects of global warming, climate change were. And the last person, a brother by the name of Bill Strickland. Bill Strickland is in Pittsburgh, and he has what is known as the he's an educator who's been doing planting of orchids and flowers for 30 years, bringing excellence to education. And so I took those three individuals' work and have really, that's been the core, the foundation, and really tried to synthesize all of those different strategies and all those, to your point earlier, best practices. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think, and so as we move forward in Project Sweetie Pie, started off really around food. And then I was at a conference at Tufts University, 500 food champions from around the country. And I asked the question, what are we going to do about the Farm Bill? It was crickets in the room. And it wasn't just—
It's going on right now, right?
It is. It's actually being fostered right now. And so nobody wanted to answer the question. It was as if I hadn't asked the question. That was what was demoralizing. The question was absorbed as if it had never, into a black hole. And I realized from that point, had an epiphany, that I could no longer just see myself as a growing urban farming, that I really had to shapeshift again, mm-hmm. and to really see that what we were is that we're all environmentalists. We're all in this thing together. You're stewards of the land. Either you're a good steward or you're a poor steward of the land.
And so, most of us are poor stewards.
Exactly, precisely.
And it's because we weren't taught, is a big part of it, right? We were taught the wrong way through the school system. And so now we sort of have to relearn to a certain extent, right? Like, I mean, reading, writing, arithmetic are great. I'm very happy that I'm literate in those. But if I can't learn how to take care of my planet, then I'm not gonna have a use for reading, writing, arithmetic, right? I'm gonna be out here barely trying to survive. And so we're seeing the degradation of our environment. And I saw a quote not too long ago that said, you can tell the health of a community through its riverways.
Okay.
So you can look at the river, and if the river is clean, right, that's telling you that they're a healthy, sustainable community. So when I see that, and when I hear that, that means most of our communities aren't healthy. Because when we look at our rivers, when I went to the Mississippi River, right, mm-hmm. and I'm sure the Mississippi River was never clear blue like the Bahamas or anything, but still, in San Antonio, I can't really go swim in the river anymore.
Right.
But I see pictures of when people did.
Right.
People used to swim in the San Antonio River, but no longer. Like, I'm not jumping in that thing. Right. And so going to the point that you're saying, hey, we are all stewards, we are all environmentalists, but maybe we just don't realize it. How are we going to change that? So as you're transforming and you're shifting, what does that look like?
I'm a poet as well. For traders and slave raiders and industrial coal agers, they claimed her as their savior. Yet the MISSISSIPPI treated her foul. Pollutants what they gave her in exchange for all of her favors. And now we paddle fast past our dirty, ugly past in a desperate attempt to try to save ourselves from exploding greenhouse gas. So there's a rationale, for all of this cement and concrete. As long as they separate us from Mother Earth, then we don't realize that Mother Earth is who our mother is. And so it's all by design. White supremacy is the elephant in the room, and that we as griots, we as freedom fighters, it is incumbent on us that we understand that we have been toxically poisoned by perceptions and cosmology other than our own, and that we have been emulating societies that they have no direction known. And so it's really about a sense of us really coming to understand who we are, ancestral, and that spirit lives on in us, and that all of us are leaders, and we can't allow it to continue to be divided divided and conquered, and Shaka Zulu said that, Geronimo said that, is that we must come together as leaders, as of our communities to save the planet. It's about us saving the planet.
Mm-hmm. Whoo, that's a lot, y'all. He just dropped some bombs on us. And, there's so many key points that I want to dig into. But one of the first things that you said was keeping us disconnected from earth with concrete, right? And the way that we build these cities. And when you look at the way like a parasite will take over a host, or a cancer, right, will essentially multiply its cells until the point that it kills the host. I feel like we're getting very close to that. And so we have to build different, right? And this is systemic. You talked about the toxicity of the land, the toxicity of our bodies. We have been duped, right, into this way of life. And you talk about the roots, right, and the division, or divide and conquer. And one of the Marley Sons says they divide us at the root and teach us their own truth, right? So you can take a transplant at a very young age and transplant into something else and try to get it to grow in those conditions, right? And so here we are, transplanted in America, right, growing in a certain soil, and we are not able to reach our true potential without all the nutrients and the connection to history, because I think a lot of history is in the soil, right? Like there's artifacts, right, that they can geologically or archaeologically uncover, right? And there's like the physical artifacts, but then there's the non-physical artifacts as well, and understanding, our true history. So I'm happy that you're here dropping some history on us.
Well, I always try to
making
use
the future as well.
I always try to use his history as the barometer. We've got a new initiative. We just bought some property, and we're going to create the Black Star Line Fruit and Vegetable Emporium. We're moving the transition. Agriculture hasn't really been our friend on the governmental side. Why? Because they're torn between two lovers. Dollars that they're receiving is from corporate oil and the big investors. I mean, as we looked at the last Sustainable Development Goal conference, right? COP conference, it really got hijacked by the petroleum industry.
The chair of like the whole organizing, was like an oil rep, right?
Okay. So you talk about greenwashing. We saw it in real time. And so now more than ever, we're in this tug of war between two worlds, two spirits, and you can't serve two gods, And so as we move forward to really try to pull our communities and our young leaders and our future leaders, it's incumbent that we really set our priorities and we determine where our North Star is. And so I'm also crafting a project that I call the North Star Urban Farm and Food Corridor.
In Minneapolis?
In Minneapolis, on Broadway. We see that as our Black Wall Street. We've all seen Black Panther. It's time to build it.
There you go.
It's time, and through our collective history, some young brothers I know, we're working on a thing called Motown Lawn and Garden. So how do we take all of that history that we've lived and others throughout our whole diaspora, and how do we translate that into signposts, markers that help guide us into the future? And so if Disney can build the mega empire, financial empire that he's done around fantasy, why don't we think about that, what we can co-created, curated around our collective Black history, and bring it to a space and a place that then becomes our North Star, where we're looking to the future to craft, what I call a food-focused future.
Well, I went to the Smithsonian African American Museum, and they start out sort of like in the basement, right? And there's a little bit of history. It's like maybe 1-2 walls, I want to say, of like pre-African American history, right? And then it goes into slavery, and then as you make your way up, it gets into more contemporary times. But again, knowing the history, you said Shaka Zulu, and all of the components. There's actually a documentary on it called High on the Hog, where he connects like the cuisine of Americans and how Black Americans contributed towards it. If we know our history, right? And the amazingness, the technology, the academic and scholarship that occurred pre, right? Then it's much easier to see into a future where that's happening again, right? So that's really critical, I think, and creating spaces to have those conversations. The gardens are a great way. It's sort of a bridge, right? To be able to connect back to the land and say, hey, like, these are things that are grown. These are things that are healthy. These are things that our ancestors have been cultivating for thousands of years, right? So tying that in, and then also creating a new future, like you're talking about.
Right.
The fact that you have property that y'all are purchasing. So I went to y'all's one facility. Is that the facility you're talking about, or a separate one?
This is one recent acquisition.
All right, expanding.
Because on Broadway and Oliver, NEON, Northside Economic Opportunity Network, they just got from the state, they got $6 million to do a 12-bay commercial kitchen. On the corner of Broadway and 4th Avenue, which is kind of the gateway to North Minneapolis, a gentleman by the name of Tito Wilson just got $500,000 to do a food project, a food court that he's calling Schwank. And so I go to Warren. I say, Warren, it's all well and dandy that you got this funding to do this commercial kitchen to train culinary arts and the food entrepreneurs. But after they're all dressed up, hopefully successful, where do they go from there? What's on the other side of the equation? Because I think that's one dire mistake that we make as a people. Is that we think in terms of momsy, popsy, onesie, twosie, instead of us really thinking about how can we create the whole big chimichanga. Mm-hmm. And so on Broadway, this Main Street in North Minneapolis, one of the main thoroughfares, so I go to him and I say, well, why aren't we thinking about this whole thing? If we're going to go to the state to ask for individually, why don't we start talking about what is our collective vision? And what is it? That way, then, you become part of that puzzle. I become part of that puzzle. We're all pieces in the puzzle, rather than us being one singular piece, really thinking in
Fighting
terms
that
of
on our own.
Carving that out on our own, but only thinking very minimal, rather than thinking broadly and comprehensively in terms of how can we make the biggest impact and what is necessary so that we as a community can benefit the largest swath of people. And so we've got to really start, and that's the work of where we are at Project Sweetie Pie. How do we integrate into some of this public land development that is happening across your city? That is really where the money is.
Construction.
Not only
multi-million-billion-dollar project.
It's not even just the construction itself. It's all of the ancillary revenue streams that go to fuel that construction project. But if we really start talking about first of all, food sovereignty as being national security, as we saw during COVID. Now we make the argument that every development project, every entity in our community should be driving toward a greener future. And so that means not only in terms of food, but it also talks about solar. It also talks about composting. It talks about biodigesters. Yep. And now we integrate that not only into just our own personal project, but we talk about it as a standard for all future development. And so going to places like, and I use this, going to Habitat for Humanity and challenging them. It might have been good enough that, reuse is good enough principle and that you're keeping that from the landfill. It might have been good enough in the 80s, 90s, 2000, but it's no longer good enough.
You got to do better.
Because you could also be wedding to your facilities. You could have an urban farm installation on that. You could have solar on each and every one of your buildings.
Rainwater capture.
Energy. Exactly. And so the same thing can go for Habitat for Humanity. We should be talking
when they're building the houses.
Yeah. When they're building their houses, same thing that we should be talking to Goodwill. All of these agencies that have their own narrow niche that they're doing that is helping the planet. But how can we blossom that so that it's like sweet potato vines? It's like cucumber vines, where now we're all interfaced, we're all intertwined, and we're all building as one community, one Minnesota, one Texas, one Michigan, and that we're making sure that we're really taking away all of the obstacles. We're only limited by our lack of imagination.
Creativity and working together. We're not really taught necessarily. We're very an individualistic society, which I think you mentioned in the very beginning. But creating these systems, integrating it, there's actually a term that I've heard in the past called like solar punk, right? But either way, however we want to describe it, we have to, and a lot of people talk about a revolution, but I think it needs to be an evolution.
Right.
We have to have a mentality and a mind shift where now we're in the computer age. We have all this technology around us. How do we evolve as humanity? Allow technology to do what it can, but also integrate these systems so that we're sustaining ourselves for another 1,000 years, right? We're not thinking 10-year plans, 20-year plans. Like these need to be extremely into the future. And I'm hopeful. We're still here. Our heart's still beating, right? So every day there's an opportunity to make change. Well, you know what's the last question coming up? Okay. If you had a garden sign to communicate an amazing, much-needed message, what would it say?
Okay. I think I would say it's a kind of a new tagline that I'm using often is from out of these caves to the middle of the stage where we can get people engaged. From the educated elite to the foot soldiers in the street. Let's move as one love.
How do we get in contact with you? What's your information?
Project Sweetie Pie, Project Sweetie Pie, www.projectsweetiepie.org.
Okay.
My name is Michael Chaney. I'm the executive director, founder of Project Sweetie Pie. We're in Minneapolis, and we're doing good in the neighborhood.
You are in the cave with us right now, but I have a feeling one day we're going to be on the stage too, brother. So thank you so much. Thank y'all for tuning in. Till next time. Adios.